What's up everyone, Stella Chung here, and we have a lot of news to cover today. In today's fix, Unity announced a new install fee policy that's gotten major backlash from developers. Square Enix has lost nearly $2 billion in value since Final Fantasy XVI, and we have details on the Nintendo Direct tomorrow. Let's get to it. Yesterday, Unity, the cross-platform 3D and 2D game engine, posted an update on a new policy that could potentially bankrupt some developers. Unity is now requiring developers to pay a small fee every time someone downloads a game built on Unity's game engine. This new policy is called the Unity Runtime Fee, and this new pricing model will apply to developers who reach a certain amount of installs and revenue. The announcement explained why Unity would take those fees in the statement, quote, "We chose this because each time a game is downloaded, the Unity runtime is also installed. Also, we believe that an initial install-based fee allows creators to keep the ongoing financial gains from player engagement, unlike a revenue share." Unity did walk back some of its policy specifics after severe backlash from developers and insisted the fee would only apply to the initial installation of a game and that developers would not be on the hook for installations through subscription services. So installations on sub-services like Xbox Game Pass would then turn to Xbox to pay the fees instead. In the adjusted policy statement, Unity will only apply the fee to initial installations of games versus the original one, which was if a player uninstalled then reinstalled a game, that would count as 2 installs and would have to pay 2 different fees. In the adjusted policy statement, Unity will only apply the fee to initial installations of games, versus if a player uninstalled then reinstalled, counting as 2 different installs, and that demos won't count as installs, and that charity games and bundles are exempted from fees. I'm glad that charity bundles will be given a pass, but Unity didn't give any clarification on how they would detect games given out during charity initiatives versus normal game code purchases, especially since most charity game codes and bundles are just normal codes given out, and if Unity is just detecting initial install, it's extremely hard to understand how they'll be able to weed out those installs from others. The Unity runtime fee is scheduled to be effective January 1st, 2024. Developers have universally voiced their anger and feelings of betrayal on social media, and it's only grown even after the minuscule walkback Unity provided on its original policy. Massive Monster, Cult of the Lamb developers posted on Twitter that players should buy Cult of the Lamb now because they'll be deleting the game on January 1st next year. Massive Monster went on to say that they had future projects planned to be developed in Unity, but now those projects are going to be significantly delayed since their team would need to learn a new skill set in changing to a new game engine. Michael J. Foxney, developer on Dead Static Drive, posted on Twitter the major problems around the Unity deal with free-to-play games. You can make a game, have it be free-to-play with microtransactions, and say the game makes about 200,000 from in-app purchases from being installed 3 million times. That would then prompt the developers to owe Unity 20 cents per 2.8 million installs, which equals 560,000. That would be 360,000 more than they actually made. Many developers are concerned about not only their current and future games under this new policy, but their former games still available to purchase and download. Other developers were concerned that this could lead to smaller teams who build their games on Unity to pull titles from digital storefronts to prevent other players from downloading their games and initiating more fees. Forrest, an Among Us developer from Inner Sloth Games, said, "I bet Steam, Epic, Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft will love having waves of developers pulling their games." Sanatana Mishra, designer and developer on Tempopo, asked on Twitter, "So, do I just rebuild my whole game in a different engine? Spent a small fortune on pro licenses to develop the game over several years. Seems kind of insane that Unity can just throw this out there on a whim. They should refund the lifetime license costs for everyone." In an additional statement, Unity specified that this new program was to ensure developers find success before the install fee takes effect, and that the only developers who will be impacted are those who have successful games and are generating revenue way above the thresholds. Of course, this raises heavy concerns on how exactly Unity is going to keep an install abuse system in place to make sure there aren't any fraudulent installs happening. Unity stated it would track installs with its own proprietary data and that it already had a fraud detection practices in their ads technology. That's solving a similar problem, so they'll just use that as a starting point. Ariane Bjorgensen from Epic Games posted their Unreal Engine policy on Twitter in reply to the Unity news. Unreal's 5% royalty model only applies after developers' first $1 million in gross revenue. So if a developer makes $1 million and $1, they owe Unreal a whopping total of 5 cents. And Ari specified this is per title. and any revenue generated from the Epic Game Store will be excluded from that royalty. Unity was under heavy scrutiny prior to this policy change due to massive layoffs in the first half of this year, and also with John Riccitiello, CEO of Unity Technologies, coming under fire for referring to developers who don't focus on microtransactions as, quote, the biggest idiots. He did apologize for that statement, but I'm pretty sure with this new policy change, his feelings towards developers are fairly clear. Interestingly enough, Riccitiello also sold 2,000 Unity shares September 6th, just a week before this policy announcement. He also wasn't the only one to sell a bunch of stock a week before this game-changing announcement, as several other Unity board members sold significant numbers of shares. Unity stock prices took a heavy dip after this announcement yesterday, soon after the Unity runtime fee statement. This is still a developing story with ever-moving parts, so we'll be sure to keep you updated on any further changes and news about Unity's new policy. In other video game business news, the price of Square Enix shares have plummeted almost 30% since the release of Final Fantasy XVI, which means the company has lost nearly $2 billion in value. Final Fantasy XVI sold 3 million copies in its launch week back in June, and the following month, Square Enix told IGN that its sales were still extremely strong and that it was doing well relative to the size of the PS5 install base. Inside sources later told IGN that sales had slowed considerably, which isn't surprising considering the number of other huge games that released this year, but that it wasn't yet considered a disaster. The company losing $2 billion in market value, on the other hand, could be classified as disastrous. A report from Bloomberg dug into the matter and noted a sharp profit decline that began in August, but also pointed out that Final Fantasy XVI was doing a lot of heavy lifting, trying to recoup Square Enix's loss from Forspoken and Marvel's Avengers, neither of which seemed to meet expectations commercially or otherwise. According to Bloomberg sources, the root of the problem was game producers being given full control over the scope and direction of projects, and that shifting goals made for a volatile final product. I'm not really sure what the alternative is. Letting marketing departments and shareholders decide what makes for a fun video game doesn't exactly have the best track record. Moving forward, Square Enix's recently appointed CEO Takashi Kiryu intends to reduce the number of smaller games in development to focus on big budget games that have a greater chance of making an impact on the company's bottom line. Though that's a two-way street. As the saying goes, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Counterpoint, go big or go home. We'll have to wait and see how that pans out in the long run, but in the meantime, Final Fantasy XVI has 2 DLC expansions in the works, and there's also a PC port coming soon. Meanwhile, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is just around the corner, and Tokyo Game Show kicks off next week, and it's possible Square Enix has something new to show off then. Speaking of the Tokyo Game Show, everyone at Nintendo could probably clock out and take the next 3 months off to coast on Tears of the Kingdom sales, but thankfully, that's not the case, and the company announced a Nintendo Direct taking place tomorrow morning to show off what's next. Posted on Twitter by the official Nintendo of America account, the announcement reads, "Tune in on September 14th at 7 a.m. PT for a Nintendo Direct livestream featuring roughly 40 minutes of information focused on Nintendo Switch games releasing this winter." Of course, rumors are flying around that this could be the reveal of the next console. Switch 2, Super Switch, Switch Advance, whatever they're calling it. But considering how much that might cannibalize holiday sales of the current Switch, we're not holding our breath. Rumored announcements include a Wind Waker remaster, a Fire Emblem remake, and a new Donkey Kong game. Potentially the much-demanded Donkey Kong's Divorce Cruise. Okay, maybe not that last one, but as always, temper your expectations and take everything with a grain of salt. You can watch the Nintendo Direct right here on IGN along with IGN's Nintendo voice chat crew. The pre-show kicks off at 6:30 a.m. I know, it's really early, but it'll be worth it. And be sure to stick around afterwards for a full breakdown for everything announced. And that's your daily fix for Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. For more, go check out IGN's review of Lies of P, which looks to be a really good time for Bloodborne and Dark Souls fans alike. Keep on gaming, and I'll see you next time.